All right, welcome back to another episode of the Four Wide Podcast. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard, Jonathan Williams, and Dan Kiley. We are super excited about this episode. As you can see with the title, Dan, turn your volume down.
Sorry, trying to share the show.
As you can see with the title, it is a Super Bowl preview show for this week. So we're excited to jump into it. We know the Pro Bowl is going on right now. Right now, I've got it on the TV over here. There's some type of concert going on the TV. Don't even know who's doing it. Honestly, the games have been like some of the stuff is fun to watch as far as the Pro Bowl goes. The skills challenges are good. Flag football has been interesting. It's kind of, it's flag football. So it's interesting to see these really, really talented athletes just going out there and playing flag football. So that hasn't been the best in the world, but skills challenge has been fun. So we decided we would take the time today, not to talk about the Pro Bowl, but to go ahead and give you a jumpstart preview of the Super Bowl coming up next week. Kansas City and the Eagles. It's a 1.5 point spread. Should be a really, really good game. I know both.
Who's the favorite?
Y'all, I think it's the Eagles by 1.5.
Eagles.
Yep, Eagles by 1.5. Philly by 1.5 in that game. So that's the spread. It should be a close game. Last week we sat here and talked about the different games that were coming up. We did a show Saturday talking about the Sunday conference championship games. They went exactly as I saw them. I literally told y'all that the San Francisco and Philly game was a 10-plus point game. Didn't quite expect it to get as bad as it did. Also seeing Brock Purdy go down, that influenced that score a little bit as well. But I did think it would be a 10-plus point game. Also did think that the Bengals and Chiefs game was going to be a one-score game. And I literally came on here and said, it's whoever touches the ball last. That's exactly what happened. People can say what they want about the flag, at the end, the rough in the pass or unnecessary roughness thing. You can say what you want on that, but it came down to the last second of the game. Even if that play didn't happen, you got to think the Chiefs still had time on the clock and they could have gotten into field goal range at the end of it. So it wasn't over if they don't make that penalty as well.
Yeah, but the 2 third downs was a big deal. That was a much bigger deal.
But even that,
exactly.
But even that, like that drive didn't even turn out into anything for the Chiefs. They ended up punting the ball back.
That was earlier in that drive.
I thought that was earlier in the game.
No, they were going to punt. So
there were some questionable stuff on that.
I think the only call that I really thought was controversial, or the one that did not get called, was the one where it should have been roughing the passer on Joe Burrow, where the guy like shoved Joe Burrow into the end zone like 2 seconds after he threw the ball. That was really the only one that I really thought was like, okay, that was pretty blatant and it didn't get called. But the unnecessary roughness one, that was clear as day, in my opinion. Like, it was absolutely clear as day. And I hate that the game almost came down to that, because we all know, we all played sports, like, especially in those moments, like, especially in an opportunity to go to your championship game in your sport, like, emotions are running so high and everybody's just trying to make a play, especially on the defensive side of the game. And number 56, I believe it was for Cincinnati, correct? 56 or 58. Yes. He'd been making plays for Cincinnati all game long. And now his entire play for that game came down to that. And that's all anybody will remember for him. And, it was a late hit. It was a bad decision. Shouldn't have touched a quarterback in that scenario, but the guy was probably just trying to make a play and just really probably didn't realize where he was on the field. But it really did end up having a huge impact on the game, and it's what set up Kansas City into prime field goal position and let them to go on to win that game. But, it is what it is. That's what sports is, unfortunately. Sometimes it comes down, you put the game in the hands of other people, and you try and limit that to the best of your ability, but, you can't always avoid it. Georgia fans know that firsthand experience of games, certain calls and whatnot. Ohio State fans have been crying about it for a while now. Like, it just is what it is at this point. People are not perfect. Referees aren't going to call a game perfectly.
And the other thing too is that Patrick Mahomes really helped out by selling that call. He didn't hit him hard. He did not hit him hard enough for him to go flying into the bleachers. I mean, that was all acting on the back end of that.
I think
it's
acting, but it's momentum. It's like momentum going that way too. You saw what happened to 56. 56 messed up his own knee on that play, and he went tumbling. So like the play itself was just their bodies are moving that direction. If you look at like a still frame shot of like he does hit him, and it's barely out of bounds. Like everyone shows a clip where he's like 2 feet out of bounds or something like that. But when he actually starts touching him, his foot just goes out of bounds. Like it's a split second. So it's not as bad as people made it look. It was really, really close.
Patrick Mahomes was dealing with a foot injury or a leg injury
Yeah.
that entire game. So it's probably better for him to sell it and just lay flat on his back than him try and stand up and put a lot of weight on his foot in that moment too. So like, yeah, he probably did sell it a little bit, but at the same time, like that was probably the correct move for him.
Yeah, I think it was the correct move on that. Dan, are you muted? I heard you say something, or I saw you try to say.
It's fine. It's hard to argue. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. Like it's a close play, and I don't. I mean, yeah, maybe he did sell it a little bit, but at the end of the day, I mean, it was unnecessary roughness. It was a late hit out of bounds, and it just unfortunate it comes down to it. But my thing that I want to tell everybody that looks at the game that is people blamed him, all that kind of stuff. My coach when I played back in high school would always tell us if a game comes down to one singular play, or you try to say a game was lost or won because of one singular play, you're ignoring what happened for the other 60 minutes of that game, or however long when I played baseball. So the other 7 innings of that game, whatever it was, that would have led to that. There was probably an error earlier on. There's other penalties that cost you. There's other drop passes or incompletions or stuff that have led to a different type of outcome. Not
every
one single play.
Yeah, every single player in that game could probably go back to a moment in that game where they're like, man, if I had just did this one thing instead of that, or made this decision or didn't do this, then that game might have went differently. Like every single player has those moments in games. Like it's just, like I said, it just so happens that was in the biggest moment of the game and that guy made the wrong decision. Right. And so now that's all anybody is going to remember,
Well, our coaches always used to say, don't leave it up to them. Don't leave it up to the umpire referees. Like you should never have a game where you're leaving it up to them. And I know you guys are talking about that game, but going back to the first game of the day, the 49ers and Eagles. I mean, Brock Purdy going down early in that football game completely changed the complexity of that game. 49ers had no chance after that. You could see the emotion coming out of that balloon, so to speak. But once the moment that happened, it was over. And I really felt like I told you I thought that Philadelphia would win that football game, but I really felt like the 49ers could make it a very competitive game. And I really believe that. I really believe that the 49ers can make that a competitive game. Once he got hurt, I mean, me personally, I just checked out from the game because you knew that there was no way they were going to come back and win. And that's a shame, too, because the 49ers were playing really well. And, I think the one thing that we all agree on when we don't have a team that we're necessarily rooting for is we want to see a really compelling game. And the minute that Brock Purdy got hurt, you knew that game was not going to be compelling. Like you said, you could nitpick the end of that, the Chiefs game all you want to, but what did we get? We got a fantastic game. And, of course, all the conspiracy theorists are out that the fix was in, that the script went played out just like they said, all that, right? But at the end of the day, it's a television product. We tuned in for a great game, and that's exactly what we got. Unfortunately, we didn't get 2 of them. And that's my take on it.
We did not. So let's do this. Like, what's a take? We'll start with this game right here. We're talking about with San Francisco and Philly. What was the takeaway from that game as far as Philly goes? What did y'all learn anything from that game that's worthwhile, like mentioning going into next week? That's what I'll start with. Jonathan, you start.
I mean, I don't know that I learned anything new about Philadelphia that we didn't already know. I've been saying that they're the hottest team in the NFL. I think I would say they're the best team in the NFL. I think going into this game, Philadelphia is the best team going into this game. I think they're great on both sides of the football. They got a great defense, and their offense has really gotten clicking this year with Jalen Hurts becoming an MVP caliber quarterback, which not many people expected him to become that at the NFL level. And then you got great wide receivers around him with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. You got a great tight end in Dallas Goedert. Like, so many things are working for them. Miles Sanders is a great running back as well. I think Philadelphia is the better team going into this game. And I think they've just proven that throughout the playoffs. They were without a doubt the best team in the NFC, and they just continue to show that. So I don't know that the game against the 49ers really taught me anything that I didn't know about Philadelphia. But I mean, of course, Brock Purdy's injury probably helped that a little bit. But I think Philadelphia probably goes on to win that game regardless, even if Brock Purdy stays healthy.
The one takeaway for me was last week Jeremiah had said something to the fact, or he alluded to the fact that Philadelphia might have the best defense in the NFL. And I kind of bucked back a little bit and said I felt like the 49ers had a better defense. Now, we understand that momentum is everything, and maybe the injury really played a big factor into that to the quarterback. And I know that's on the offensive side, but we understand how it affects. But the takeaway for me was I think Jeremiah might be right. I think the Eagles might be significantly better on defense than just about everybody else. And, we have 2 dogs on that defense that we love to watch. And, they got Ndamukong Suh I don't believe they had him in the beginning of the season, right? They got him during the season when Jordan Davis got hurt, right?
I believe so.
So yeah, now you have the guy that they had before. And I have a real bad headache again, so bear with me. Who is the defensive tackle that they had?
Fletcher Cox.
And then they got Jordan Davis. And now you have Ndamukong. So you have 3 bona fide interior defensive linemen that are as good as anybody in the league. And they're on the same stinking defensive line. That is going to be hard to contend with. So my one takeaway for me is I think Jeremiah was right last week when he said the Eagles have the best defense. And that's the one thing that really grabbed my attention.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well as far as the defense goes. What I learned is, yes, I understand that Brock Purdy went down, but that Philly defense was smothering. I know he got hurt early in that game, but if y'all were watching in that first quarter while Purdy was still in the game, the Eagles were going after him. I mean, when I tell you, the play that he got hurt on was a strip sack fumble. Hassan Reddick was in the backfield constantly at the beginning of the game, making plays in the backfield. He got 2 sacks. One was that strip sack fumble that he hit the arm of Brock Purdy, and that's what made him. He actually is going to have like Tommy John surgery, I'm pretty sure, tore up his elbow on that play from what I saw. But Hassan Reddick is a guy that absolutely like pinned his ears back and was just, you couldn't block him. If you tried to block him with one guy, you had no chance early in that game. And so that's something I took away from it, that pass rush and that ability to just really, really go after him in a game like that. It was impressive to see because you're going up against a really good offensive line. At this point, no team in the Super Bowl is going to have a terrible offensive line. So that they, or in conference championship, San Francisco does not have a bad offensive line, but they couldn't keep him out of the backfield, and he was getting pressure, making plays. So I don't know if that would have changed if Brock Purdy, stayed in or not. I think it would have been more competitive, but I stand by the fact that Brock Purdy wasn't going to change the fact that this was a 24-point game. I mean, it may have been a 10-point game, but it was not going to change the fact that it was a 24-point game. In the favor of them at that point, in the sense of they could have won that game. With Brock Purdy, they had no chance of winning that game. Philadelphia's defense was absolutely smothering them from the opening snap. And I just think that it's going to continue next week with Philly. Their defense is going to be a tough play for Kansas City. Now, Kansas City has one of the best offenses that we ever get to see over the past several seasons. So it'll be a nice matchup. But once again, mentioned this last week, and it stayed true because they only allowed 7 points last week. Philadelphia's defense only allowing 7 points on the season at this point. That's ungodly. I mean, that's insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting next week with Kansas City's offense going up against the Eagles' defense, especially because, to me, I feel like for Kansas, in order for Kansas City to get this deep into the playoffs, I always felt like someone else was going to have to step up because, Travis Kelce is a household name. Everybody knows what Patrick Mahomes can do. But it was really going to be a test of who is anybody going to step up and be like what Tyreek Hill was in the past for them in the playoffs. Not necessarily the same skill set, but just like a big playmaker that can show up when you really need him to, especially considering that Mecole Hardman has been hurt majority of the playoffs. And then last week he came back and then re-injured himself. So he missed a good portion of that game still. So that'll be another interesting thing to watch to see if he's healthy for the Super Bowl. But it's like Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been a guy that has stepped up for Kansas City throughout this playoff run. I think he had 4 total touchdowns in the regular season, but he's had 3 straight games now with a touchdown for Kansas City. So he's been a guy that stepped up. McKinnon, I think it is, the running back. He's been huge for them. The running back whose last name starts with a P, I cannot remember how to pronounce his name. He's another guy that's been Pacheco. He's been another guy that's really stepped up for the Kansas City. So they have guys step up on offense, and they haven't just been having to force feed Travis Kelce and really get him the ball and make sure of course he's still making his plays, but I'm interested to see if against a defense like Philadelphia, because I don't think Kansas City has faced a defense like this in the playoffs yet, if they can continue that trend, because they got a really good secondary too. Darius Slay is one of the best in the National Football League in regards to his position. He's a dog. They got good linebackers. And then like you pointed out, Stoddard, and what you pointed out, Dan, that defensive line is a force to be reckoned with as well. Are they going to be able to get after Patrick Mahomes, especially if Patrick Mahomes is still laboring that foot injury? That could be a huge problem for them coming into this game. So I'm interested to see how that entire matchup plays out. Just Kansas City's offense versus Philadelphia's defense.
Well, I just find it incredible that Travis Kelce is 33 years old, 10 years removed from college. He was questionable coming into the game, he's still the best player on the field. I don't know how he's able to do it. I think when you talk about tight ends, and I have a fascination with tight ends, if you haven't noticed, but I mean, I think it's hard to say that anybody's better than Gronk when Gronk was healthy, right? Because Gronk completely
Gronk in
changed
his
the
prime,
game.
yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing that you could do, but and Antonio Gates is really the first new era tight end that really changed the position to where it's almost like a wide receiver in a tight end body, but he's putting up wide receiver numbers. Travis Kelce just continues to put up numbers, especially when everybody knows he's going to get the ball. And with the limited mobility of Mahomes, you knew he didn't have a lot of time to hold on to the football. So you had a feeling that Kelce was going to be an even bigger factor in this game. If I know that, if you know that, you know they knew that, and they still couldn't stop the damn man. And he's not 25 years old. He's 33 years old. I don't know how he's able to continue to do this. You know, Jonathan, you brought up a great point with the amount of linebackers, the defensive line, the amount of personnel that they're going to be able to allow to focus on Kelce because they can do so many different things with their personnel. I don't know how Kansas City is going to continue to get him the ball, but they're going to have to because he is the most important player on that field for Kansas City. And I know the easy answer is Mahomes, but if you've watched this football team at all, it's not Mahomes. Mahomes is great, right? You know, we're not taking that away. But Travis Kelce is what makes that offense go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Travis Kelce is definitely like a focal point of that offense. There's a reason he's their leading receiver year in and year out, even though they've had, some great wide receivers come through Kansas City. Like Cheetah was there, like you got plenty of guys with speed.
Did you
Everybody,
just say Cheeto?
I said Cheetah. I said Cheetah. You know who I'm talking
I swear
about.
you said Cheeto.
No, Cheetah. All right, that's fine. Whatever, you ruined it. But don't worry about it. But anyway, my point being that no matter who comes through there at wide receiver, they're still able to get him the ball. And I think what it is you're seeing just a physically gifted tight end or a guy that's as big as he is that is able to mismatch with linebackers across the league, no matter what linebackers you put on him. At the end of the day, it's always a mismatch. You can put any single linebacker on him and they can't cover him one-on-one. And so that means you got to try to high-low him and stuff like that, which takes away from other things. It's tough. It's tough with him to cover him. That's why we talked about it on this show several times. A good tight end, it really, really improves your offense. Most people would look at this game and say that Kansas City has a way better offense than Philly, and they might actually have a better offense than Philly. I would say yes, but the scoring is only 1 point off. 29.2 points per game for Kansas City and 28.1 for Philly. Part of Philly does come from their defense because their defense does not give up points. It gives them more offensive possessions, and it kind of plays out that way. But both teams are sitting here with 400 plus yards of offense every single game. There's about a 20-yard difference on offense per game for each team. So offensively, Philly's got a pretty daggum good team there as well. And Jalen Hurts, like you said, absolutely looking like an MVP type quarterback. It's nice to see an Oklahoma quarterback doing well in the NFL.
I was waiting to see who would say it. I knew someone was going to poke that bear. I knew someone was going to do it.
Well done, sir. Well done.
I mean, he's absolutely balling out. And, when he needs to throw for 300 plus yards in a game and 3-4 touchdowns, he'll do it. But also last week, he only had 130 yards or something like that, something low. But that's because he did not need to do more and their team was able to physically dominate in other ways. So I do expect a pretty good matchup, both offensively and defensively in this game.
You know what's crazy?
No, you go ahead, Dan.
I'm sorry. You know what's crazy? It's like when you think of Patrick Mahomes, do you not think of a young player in this league?
Yeah, I mean, I still see him as like that stardom, like young player that just arrived on the scene.
There's only
every
4 guys
year.
on the team that's older than he is. I'm sorry. There's more than 4, but the older it doesn't matter. But he's up there. There's only a handful of guys that are older than he is. He's already 27 years old, and he's been doing this for quite a few years now, and he's just become a name that we just count on to be there, right? And I bring that up because Jalen Hurts, a lot of people are going to say it's a flash in the pan year, right? But what he is doing is very consistent, right? He's not doing anything spectacular. He's not doing anything that can't be repeated. That's the one criticism that Matt Ryan used to get all the time is he's not a good quarterback. He would do the same things year in and year out. It's just the personnel around him would change or the defense could or couldn't make plays, whatever the case may be. The Falcons year in and year out would lose one possession games more than just about anybody in the NFL. But Matt Ryan was always the same quarterback. And I get the same vibe out of Jalen Hurts. Like, does he make really good plays? Yes. Can he make plays with his feet? Yes. But for the most part, it's not a flash in the pan for me. It's just not. And that's why I bring up Mahomes, is just because he's been so exciting. And it just like, we haven't really seen anything like it. But then on the other end, you have a guy who's just as good. He just does it in a very different way.
Well, go ahead.
I think Philadelphia has just set themselves up to be good for a pretty long time because, you know, the biggest names on that team are their youngest players. You know, Jordan Davis was named as to the all rookie team. And then also, like, you have Jalen Hurts, who's still a young quarterback. And then Devontae Smith is still fairly new to the league as well. A.J. Brown, who was kind of a new addition, and I'm sure he'll stick around for a while. They got a lot of young talent, but it's like, you know, with all these great teams, I think Georgia was a great example of this past season because everybody wanted to talk about the inexperience that they had on defense, but Georgia was just this great combination of a lot of youth, but a lot of experience at the same time. The offense was the same way, but the defense, especially, like, yeah, there was a lot of new names on the defense. Like, you had a true freshman in Malachi Stark starting, and then Michael Williams became a name in there as well. Then you had 2 new starters at linebacker. But there was also guys with a lot of experience like Christopher Smith, Nolan Smith, and some other guys on that defensive front that had just been around for a while. And I think when you combine all of those things and you really get a good mixture of it, then that's where teams really start to flourish. Because, you know, if you get too high up there in age, then typically the tank runs out eventually, or you get a pretty injury-prone team or whatnot. And if you're too young, you just have too many new experiences happening at the same time and a lot of growing pains happening at the same time, and it can kind of hinder your success. But I think Philadelphia has a great combination of just youth and experience. Like Darius Slay is a guy that's been around the football league for a while. Hassan Reddick is another guy that's been around in this league for a hot minute. And I think that's where a lot of their success is right now. And I think I think if you're a fan of an NFC team right now, you should probably be a little bit worried about Philadelphia because their roster seems like they're set up to be pretty good for the next coming years for a while.
No, it's absolutely hard to argue that. And then one of the biggest advantages, Jonathan, to your point, is Jalen Hurts is not on a mega deal, right?
Right.
So they're able to surround him. Yeah, they're able to surround him with a lot of talent. It's that perfect mix, and it's very hard to get right. I mean, it's very, very hard to get right. But if you can find that young quarterback that's on that rookie deal and ride that out for 3 or 4 years before you have to G him up, then you can surround him with elite talent. And then, he'll put up massive numbers. You'll probably make a couple Super Bowl runs. But once you have to start paying, I mean, like, look what happened with the Chiefs, and we talked about this multiple times through the year, is you had to pay Patrick, and what was the first casualty? Bye-bye, the fastest man. Yeah, the fastest man in the NFL. The guy,
Cheeto.
Yeah, the Cheeto. My man has what was the stat last year? Was it he had 20 plays over 50 yards on the season? It was ridiculous. It was like the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. And you're telling me the Chiefs wouldn't really like to have that weapon? They absolutely would. They didn't get rid of him because they didn't want him. They got rid of him because they had to G up their quarterback. So that's my point with this Philadelphia, and you made an excellent point, is this team has a chance to be really good for the next couple of years until they have to pay Hurts. And then I guess the exception to that would be is if you don't want to pay Hurts, you think you have somebody else at that point. There are some teams that have done that in the past. It's a very dangerous game to play, though.
Well, Buffalo's head coach was the one that said in one of his press conferences where they were like, would you like to have someone like a Jamar Chase? I think is what the question was. And he said, I don't want to suck enough to get a Jamar Chase. But then he went on to say, like, Cincinnati has been a major benefit of hitting on young talent and not having to pay them. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, all those cats on that offense, they're not on these super max deals yet. And that's why they've been able to make it to the AFC Championship and make it to the Super Bowl a year ago. And it's huge. It's like that. I talked about this in our group text of like, there is a small window in the NFL, in my opinion, where you can make a run and a consistent run at the same time because, the Falcons ran into the issue of like, well, we have Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, and we want to keep both of those guys, but then you had to put aside so much money into both of them that it really puts you in cap hell. And the Falcons have been a victim of it for a very long time now, and it's really hindered their success. And so now that's a huge thing is like, look at the teams that have now are being successful in the league. I just talked about Philadelphia, I just brought up Cincinnati. It's about having that right combination and making sure that you hit on those young players before that contract time comes up.
See, that's why picking a player out of Northeast West State in Michigan would not be a good idea.
Of course.
You never know what's going to happen with some of those small town players, man. They can go off. But point is this. Here's the question. So you brought up the Falcons and you brought up Julio Jones and Matt Ryan, right? What happened? The Falcons unloaded on both of those guys to dump their contracts late in their career, to try to free up some cap space, and they still are penalized this year for it. Next year, they get all that cap space back from Matt Ryan's contract, and they can actually go out and try to build a roster. So it'll be interesting to see how the front office handles that situation. My question, the reason I bring that up in this conversation is, how do the Bengals handle this coming up in the next couple of years? They only have a couple seasons before they have to pay Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. All three of those guys are going to be demanding high contracts. You have to pay Joe Burrow. That's the one you have to keep. So then you can probably keep one of those wide receivers.
Chase.
There's no way you can keep both of them.
Well, there's a reason why there's already been discussions about Cincinnati going ahead and maybe trading T. Higgins, because one, this is another big thing about the NFL is, if you kind of think that you're going to have to go in another direction from a player, like you said, keep Chase and keep Burrow, those would be the top two priorities. No duh. Well, T. Higgins' ceiling is as high as it could be right now, and so that also means that his value on the trade market is as high as it possibly could be right now. Or maybe getting another first round pick in return of him, and then you can exchange a T. Higgins and go draft another guy that maybe you see replace him, or get another draft need, like maybe another offensive lineman or something like that. So it's also about making the moves before your hand is forced, and realizing that, because I think a lot of people were talking about potentially trading Julio Jones at a point in time with the Falcons, because this is the highest that his ceiling is going to be. And history says that he is about to go on a downhill climb because of his age, his injury history and whatnot. And that's exactly what's happened with his career. Yep. And now the Falcons are probably regretting, man, we could have gotten some ridiculous value out of a Julio Jones if we had just said all right, things clearly aren't working out for this franchise right now. Maybe we should just move on and maybe get a huge return out of him instead of just having to let him walk and go somewhere else.
So let me tell you the craziest thing about the Bengals.
Okay.
They don't have a single starter over 30 years old. Not one. The oldest player on their roster is 30 years old, and he is their backup quarterback, Brandon Allen. Outside of that, nobody. Hayden Hurst, the oldest starter, at 29 years old.
Wow.
T. Higgins is 24. Jamar Chase is 22 years old.
Now you're just making me feel like a waste of space.
That's why you pay Jamar Chase instead of T. Higgins.
Absolutely. So my point is, that is a very young team, but that goes exactly to the Bills head coach, and what you just said a second ago was they are hitting on their young players. We, in our group chat that we have, I said there is an art form to mastering the draft, right? And a lot of teams don't get it right. So maybe I'm unfair to the Falcons because I'm always critical that they get it wrong all the time. The Bengals, listen, they've had a ton of first-round picks, and they've got them right. You know who else has had a monster load of first-round picks? The Browns. They haven't always got it right. That team should be in the Super Bowl every freaking year. They had to go out and
missed
pay.
It crazy.
Oh, my God, it's insane. The package that they gave up for Julio, they got nothing out of it. Nothing, boys. And I mean, listen, if Falcons kept the picks, they probably would get nothing either. But, but the point is that the Bengals have got it right. So, you can, and I know there was a little bit of hate in that comment from the Bills head coach, but at the same time, you have to kind of give them credit because they have been able to get it right. And so many teams have not gotten it right. Now, are they going to age out of this? Absolutely. They're going to have to start paying these people, and they're not going to be in the top 5 of the pick. Now we have to see, can you draft at the back end of the draft? Because there's a lot of teams in the NFL can't do that. The Patriots, the reason they were able to sustain their success, not only because they had Tom Brady, but because they were able to find players late in every single round that could make the roster. It's very easy to pick in the top 5. I would venture to say the three of us, if we were the GM and all of our picks were in the top 5, we would have a good draft.
I'll go even a little bit further and tell you too, I could make a first-round draft pick and I could hit on a first-round draft pick. So could y'all, because the first round is easy, right? The first round, you know who the best guys are out there. And I know, Dan, you don't necessarily like it, but quite frankly, Drake London, he's a good wide receiver, and the Falcons did not miss. They did not miss on him.
No.
What happens is these teams, once you get past the third round, I'd say the first 3 rounds, most teams can be good at drafting in the first 3 rounds, but you hit on it. It's the teams that can draft that 4th, 5th, 6th, maybe 7th round that they can find that diamond in the rough in those type of picks. That's the teams that'll be able to do it. You can't just be good at picking in the first round. That's why the Browns haven't been able to turn it around, because they had so many first-round draft picks. Yeah, they can hit on those, but that's all they can do. And they didn't. Yeah, exactly.
Rounds 2 through 5 or 2 through 4, really. Rounds 2 through 4 are way more important than your first-round pick, in my opinion, because there's so many names already, of course, in the NFL draft, and everybody goes into the first round pretty much knowing their top 2 options of who they want. Like if someone picks up my first option, then we're going to go here, whatever. Like they have that set up. It's rounds 2 through 4 where you really set up your roster, and if you hit on those, if you can hit on at least 2 of those picks, 2 of those 4 rounds. Then your money. That's a A+ draft, in my opinion. If you can hit on those picks, those are so crucial, and it's what a lot of these good teams have done. But the place where people get in trouble with in the first round is where someone wants to be the smartest guy in the room, and they want to go out there. They want to go out there and draft a Will Levis or something like that. In my opinion, which all right, so that's another story, but.
The draft is one of my favorite things on earth, right? I mean, I love the draft. I obsess about the draft. I love the draft. I don't know why. I'm a nerd. I get it. Okay. But the one thing that they say is to be a successful franchise, you have to get a starter out of the first, second, third round. You have to get a rotation player out of the 4th and 5th round. And then every so often, about every 2 or 3 year drafts, you have to find a player in the 6th and the 7th round that will make your roster. But every year you have to find a starter to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rounds. You have to. And then you've got to have rotational players that can play every day at the 4th and 5th, right? You just got to do it. And the teams who can do that consistently every single year, they are able to turn their rosters over continually, not have to pay veterans. The cruelty of the NFL is you cannot afford to pay veterans. You're allowed to have 1 or 2 that you keep around for a long period of time, but you cannot pay veterans to be successful in this league, and you just can't. And that's where the Falcons got in a lot of trouble.
Top line veterans, right? Like you can't be out here with like multiple people with $30 million contract like a season, like because then you can't build a normal roster where you can go out and get those guys that have been in the league for 5-6 years and you get them for $3-4 million. Like you start to really be able to limit yourself on how many of those guys you can go get when you have 2 guys making $50 million a year combined. That's insane.
Look at it this way: you found a Deion Jones, right? That was a steal. Can we all agree that was a steal?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, extremely productive. Who replaced him? The answer is nobody. They couldn't.
Anderson.
Well, no. I mean, he didn't. I mean, like they couldn't find that replacement. I mean, we held on to Deion for 2 years longer than we should have. We ended up having to pay him more money than we should have. The idea is he was a really awesome player for us for a couple of years, but he's not one of those veterans you want to pay top dollar to because he wasn't a Ray Lewis, right?
He was another example of they probably should have shipped him off when his ceiling was as high as it was and his productivity was at its cap.
There were conversations about him being traded too.
Yeah, but they didn't draft well enough. That's the problem. Yeah. They couldn't sustain the draft, and that's the Bengals' biggest issue that they're going to have going forward is can they sustain this through the draft, and we'll find out. But anyway,
that's why I say it comes down to. That's why I say it comes down to what they're going to be able to do as far as the front office side goes, if they can sustain success or not. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, as Dan said, they're not in the Super Bowl. They came up just too short.
We had a huge sidetrack right there, but man, that was good conversation.
I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I think it was a good conversation. I hope everybody else watching enjoyed that as well. But we'll get into the actual game more itself. Kansas City and Philadelphia. It is a 1.5 point spread. We won't make our picks just yet. We'll wait a couple more minutes to do that. What would you say the keys to the game are for each team, or just pick one thing that you could see the other team doing that's going to be important for, both teams? So I'll start with Jonathan.
I think they both play into one another. And I'm going to say that, like, one for Philadelphia, I'm going to go with the defensive side for them. Make someone else beat you. Don't let Travis Kelce run up the middle of the field, pick up 30 yards, 20 yards, whatever. Don't let Travis Kelce be Travis Kelce. But then on the other side for Kansas City, someone else has got to step up. You have to have this trend continue to go, whether it's Marquez Valdez-Scantling again, one of your 2 running backs that has stepped up this year. Those guys have to really show up in the Super Bowl for you to defeat Philadelphia. So I think the 2 keys to this game for me, they coincide with one another, because if Philadelphia succeeds at making someone else beat you, but you don't have another guy step up for you in Kansas City, then you're doomed. But if Philadelphia doesn't not even shut down Travis Kelce, but doesn't even kind of make Patrick Mahomes start looking someone else's way more often than he typically would or want to, then you're also going to be in huge trouble for the entirety of the game. So those are my 2 keys to the game for both teams.
The biggest thing for me is how much damage did Patrick Mahomes do to that ankle last week? Now we understand that he's got 2 weeks to recover, but listen, you can call it what you want to, and you can say I don't know, but we know that he did anything to play in that game. They taped the hell out of it. They numbed the hell out of it.
Pumped him up with some cortisone and
Absolutely.
all kinds of stuff on that one.
So how
sure.
much damage did he do to his ankle, right?
Yeah.
If you're the Philadelphia Eagles, you've got to be able to – I know I saw Harrison's in our comments there, said you got to put pressure on him. Absolutely, you got to put pressure on him, move him off for spots. For Philadelphia, offensively, don't feel the need to play, fast break offense with the Eagles or with the Chiefs. Like, you have the ability to score in chunks, and we've seen it all year long for the Eagles. Don't feel that pressure that you've got to score immediately because you have a great defense that's going to slow them down. Maybe the Chiefs come out and score right away. Okay, I mean, we don't know what the case may be, but don't worry about it. You have an offense that can catch up, and you have a defense that can slow them down. So just play your own game for the Eagles. And that would be my biggest concern with a rookie head coach over there, is that he starts to feel the pressure of needing to keep up. You have Andy Reid on the other side, who's a veteran coach, and a lot of people don't like Andy Reid. I really do like Andy Reid. I think he's a really good football coach. I thought he had that narrative coming out of Philadelphia that he couldn't win big games. I thought was complete horseshit. I didn't agree with it. I think he's a great football coach. I think he's going to have this team well prepared. I think we're going to have a great football game. But if you're the Chiefs, my biggest concern is how much damage was done to that ankle, and can he play at the level he even played last week? And I know the conventional wisdom would be that he's had more time to heal, so he's going to be even better. But I'm really concerned that he may have done more damage last week and may not be able to even play to that level. But I didn't think he was going to be able to play that well and be that mobile last week, and he proved me wrong. So those are some good drugs.
They were working, I'll say that much for sure. All right, so mine are going to be similar to yours right there. So for the Eagles, I think a key for them is exactly what you were just talking about. Control the clock. You do not need to score fast. Actually, the opposite of what you want to do. You don't want to score fast. You want those 6-7 minute drives that you travel 70 yards, 60 yards, and you put points on the board, even if it's a field goal. You want to eat the clock and keep the ball out of the Kansas City's hands, because they do score quickly and they will put points up on the board in that case if you give them the opportunity to. So offensively, you're a team that runs the ball and really well with Miles Sanders, and you average just under 150 yards a game on the ground. Stick to that. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for 150 yards on the ground in this game. And if you do that and your defense on the other side stands up like they usually do, you're going to be in a really good spot for Jalen Hurts to lead you to a good win in this game. They can win the game if they can control the clock and keep Mahomes off the field as much as possible that way. For Kansas City, it's going back to what Harrison just said in the comments as well. If Philly's going to have to try to pressure Mahomes, and they're going to try to get him off his spot, they're going to try to mess him up in the pocket and really test that ankle. Key for them is keeping Mahomes clean. If Mahomes can have enough time sitting in that pocket, he'd give him 3-4 seconds in the pocket, and he's going to absolutely pick apart the defense. Even though Philly has as good of a defense as they do, and they only allow 7 points a game, if you let him sit in the pocket for 3 to 4 seconds clean and step into a throw, he will eat you alive. And I think that would be my key for them.
And let me add on to that. I think multiple times this year we've talked about a team with the ability to run the football is going to have an advantage. We really felt like last week the Chiefs haven't had the ability to sustain running the football. It didn't really factor in. Pachenko did just enough, but Miles Sanders has been pretty good this year, and they have a big offensive line. I think the Eagles definitely have a huge advantage in the running game, but
for sure.
With that defensive line with the Eagles, I don't know that they're going to be able to do it. And I don't even know how much they try to lean on it, right? I don't even know how much they try to run the ball. I'm talking about the Chiefs here. So I keep saying it, and it hasn't really shown up to the level where it clearly dictates the game. But I feel like for just some reason, I feel like in this game is going to be a major factor that the Chiefs can't run the football.
I think both of you brought up great points about the pace of the game, and I'm going to relate this to basketball because that's a sport I know. But, teams that like to play fast in basketball, they typically run a full court press. And the whole antic behind a full court press is to make the other team not only feel pressure, but make them play your pace of game. They want to force you to play their style of game. And the worst thing you can do as a basketball team when someone is full court pressing you is continue to play into their game and speed up your own offense. Like now, obviously, if they give you a free layup, like if Kansas City is letting you take a deep shot and it's wide open, obviously you got to take that. You take advantage of that opportunity. But the worst thing you can do is push the ball down the court, beat the press, and jack up a wide open 3-pointer shot, whether it's open or not, right at the start of the shot clock, and then it misses, and then they get to transition right back into their offense and continue to play the pace of the game. Philadelphia cannot play victim to that. If Kansas City jumps out with 2 scores early, Philadelphia cannot feed into that pressure of feeling like they have to pick up the pace of their game. Stick with your guns, stick with what's got you to this point of the season, and play your style of football, because it's probably going to balance out sooner or later, and it's worked this long, so don't play into that. Don't let Kansas City dictate how this game is played.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot in NFL or in college football, NFL, and just football in general, where you see a team get down by 2 scores, whether it be 10 or 14 points. It's early in the game. You're talking like early second quarter or something like that, and all of a sudden the other team panics and they stop playing their style of football, when in reality, all they need to do is keep doing what they always do, and they'll climb back in, especially when you look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a really good defense. Just remind, like at that point, head coach got to sit there and go, hey guys, we're not going to panic. Our defense is going to keep them off the board moving forward. They're going to slow them down, and we're going to have chances to play offense the way we want to and go ahead and just eat at it. You know what I mean? And eat back into that game. 14 points doesn't sound great in the NFL, but when you have a great defense like the Eagles have, you can climb back into that. And I mean, you score enough points offensively in your own method as well. Once again, they're almost 30 points a game, 28.1 points a game. So you score enough, you're going to be able to do it. Just play your football, your brand of football, and you'll be good. But I think we kind of wrapped everything kind of nicely right there. So let's go ahead and transition into picks for this game. And we'll let everybody get back to, if y'all want to watch the Pro Bowl skill stuff that's going on, y'all have at it. But we'll let you guys get to that in a second. But game is a 1.5 point spread, neutral site, obviously. Philadelphia Eagles are the ones favored. Jonathan, how you feeling?
I've rode with the Eagles for this long, and I've been high on the Eagles for this long, and especially Dan talking about Patrick Mahomes' injury and how much he took some pretty nasty hits this last week. And I know that he's gotten pretty much 2 weeks to rehab this injury. He's got another week ahead of him to kind of let that heal and whatnot. But I just think, especially with how good the Eagles defense is, I think that's a really big concern if I'm a Chiefs fan and for Patrick Mahomes. I've rode the wave this long, and I'm going to ride it into the Super Bowl. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. The defense has been good all year. The offense has really stepped up. Jalen Hurts has been really good all year. I just think that their play style and the way that they have gotten here and the way that they carry themselves, I just think that they're a perfect matchup against the Chiefs and that they're going to have a lot of success in this game. I don't know. I'm not going to go as far to say that I think that Eagles just go in there and blow the doors off of them or anything like that. But I do think the Chiefs end up edging out the Chiefs, or the Eagles end up edging out the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Dan.
Well, I mean, listen, I've already seen the script. I already know how this game plays out. The Chiefs
you and Arian Foster sat down together, huh?
Yeah. So listen, the Chiefs are going to be up 24-13 at the half, and then the Eagles are going to win 37-34. So there you go.
That was script. What was that from, by the way? I saw that as well. What was that? Where did somebody find that? Or did somebody just make it?
I have no idea. I don't know.
Oh, well, either way. But
all jokes aside, I really do think the Eagles win. I think it's going to be a close game. I really do think the Eagles are going to come from behind. And I mean, you could say this is the script, right? But it makes sense. And that's the way I see the game playing out. I think most people think the game's going to play out. But, I think it'd be cool to see Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean win back-to-back national championships.
Yeah, they get to go back-to-back like their boys did in Athens. So that'd be nice to see for sure. I'm with you guys. The ESPN matchup predictor, so the FPI, has it at a 50-50 game right now. The spread is
what you want in a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
it's exactly
100%.
what you want. Exactly what you want. And the spread is -1.5. The tickets are going for like $4,300 is the cheapest ticket to get into that game right now, which is insane. But that's what people are paying right now. So everyone wants to see this game. They want it to be a good game. I think it is going to be a 1-score game. Maybe not a 2-point game, but I think it's a 1-score game. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the Eagles having a chance to run out the clock with Miles Sanders and see if they can assert their dominance and their will in the run game in the fourth quarter to try to ice it away with a fourth quarter lead like that and try to keep Mahomes from making that late game heroics. I think that's what it's going to come down to. I just think that, like you said, Jonathan, we've been on this all day long. It is a game that the Eagles have been insane, all season long. They deserve their shot to do it, and this is their chance to prove to everybody that they are, a dominant force in the NFC for a while to come as well. Kansas City's been there a lot at this point in the late, conference championships and stuff. It's the Eagles' chance to go. I know they won a Super Bowl a couple years ago with Nick Foles and all that, but they took a step back after it. They're back, and it's time for them to prove to everybody that they are back. So I'm going with the Eagles as well. Anything else, boys? What else we got?
Fly, Eagles, fly. That's all I got to say.
All right, I'm with you guys. Everybody, appreciate you joining in and watching all the comments and everything in there. We're still going to bring content to you guys moving forward. We'll probably do an episode after the Super Bowl, maybe Monday after the Super Bowl, something like that. We haven't ironed that out on our side yet, but we will give you some post-Super Bowl content to talk about the game and what happened and what we're looking forward to in the offseason and stuff as well. But as always, you guys.
Well, hold on.
Oh.
Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know.
Yes.
I want to talk NBA, and I know I want to talk MLB. I know Jonathan would love to talk NBA. I know we could talk some Georgia basketball. We could talk a lot of different other sports because we're very interested in it. What would you guys be interested in hearing? Let us know, please. What do you want to talk about? Because we want to continue to bring you content. We don't want to put the show on the shelf. So I know Jonathan and I would love to talk basketball. I know Jeremiah would love to talk baseball with us. So whatever you want to hear, just let us know. Oh, no Kyrie. No Kyrie trade talk.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. Let us know, and we'll get to it in the offseason as well and continue to bring you guys great content throughout the offseason until next season starts back up. But as always, you guys, we love you. We'll catch you guys next week.